Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Mid-America PTTC podcast. Before we get into the content, we'd like to thank our funder, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And a quick note, although funded by SAMHSA, the content of this recording does not necessarily reflect the views of SAMHSA. Now, I'm your host, Dave Clausen, and I'm the director of the Mid-America Prevention Technology Transfer Center. Today we're speaking with Angie from Iowa's Alliance of Coalitions for Change, or AC4C for short. Now, AC4C works to unify Iowans to reduce substance misuse on a state and community level. In this episode, we'll discuss how Iowa grew a grassroots statewide alliance of coalitions and identify 3 key partners they had while doing this. And Angie pulls from her 20 years experience working with coalitions to share the first steps for a new coalition, how to build your team, and working with the Golden Circle to unify your team's efforts. We'll also unpack a key approach to training coalitions that empowers each individual member to go out in their community and engage new partners and grow support for their efforts. Angie also shares how a consensus workshop helped a small rural coalition create their mission statement over just 1 lunch hour. There's tons of value in this episode, and without further ado, let's get to the content. All right, well, I'd like to welcome Angie from Iowa. Thanks for joining us today. Now, if you would, Angie, take a moment and just share a little bit about your background and your work there in Iowa for those that aren't familiar with you.
Sure. I have been working in the coalitions for almost 20 years. It started with a local coalition in our county that I reside, and we went through a drug-free community support grant. Actually started with a mentoring grant and then had 10 years of funding after that. As we evolved and sunsetted that grant at that same time, we had started a coalition of coalitions, which was called Alliance of Coalitions for Change. And in 2005, we started that initiative. And after our funding was sunsetting, we had 39 drug-free community support grants at one time in Iowa. And we realized if we could channel that energy into a statewide organization, we could really be able to work together better and smarter and use everyone's resources and information that they knew about what they could do in the anti-drug coalition work. So as that came about, we decided we put something out there that was kind of off the wall and create a community of prevention and apply for a drug-free community support grant as that state entity. So AC4C was one of the first ones to actually receive a drug-free community support grant as a organization or alliance covering the whole entire state. And so AC4C is just finishing their last year of that funding of the first 5 years. And I am the director of that program now.
All right. I love it. 20 years of working with coalitions. We could talk for hours about the lessons learned and experiences. We may have to come back and do another episode as well.
Certainly.
I really like hearing the background on AC4C, the Alliance. It sounds like it was almost a grassroots startup for that statewide alliance.
It was. We never really had funding. We had little pots of money here or there that we grabbed a hold of to do town halls or work on a brochure together. But until the Drug-Free Community Support Grant, it really existed with just volunteers coming together. And it couldn't have been, I should put a plug in here for our Iowa National Guard, the MCTC, because they host us 4 times a year for a 2-day retreat and have done that for over a decade.
That might lead into my next question, actually. We'll see if we get there. If not, I'll bring it back around. But what makes AC4C so effective with that grassroots, the volunteer base, getting it started?
I think the organization really has been all about empowering each other's expertise. We leaned into what was known in the Guard terms as SME, subject matter experts, and everyone, whether it be working on marijuana policy or you have some marketing skills, whatever it is, we really assess the members and let them, put their volunteer time into what they enjoy. that's part of it. And then just leaning into the resources that are available to us. And we're kind of taking that model into our coalitions that are just getting started, that you don't necessarily have to have the big win, the big money, the big grant. If you have passionate people with interest to really make community level change happen, you can do it on little or no money. And we lead by example.
Mm-hmm. No, that too might come a little bit from the National Guard partnership, leading by example.
Absolutely.
With my background in the National Guard, I was in the infantry unit, and our motto was "Follow me," because you lead from up front, lead by example.
Okay. Yeah.
So it sounds like you really just embrace that team approach and identifying and working in your strengths and passions. I really enjoy that. That's meaningful. Communities, team, that's where you really can create change. What other sort of unique partnerships do you have outside of the MCTC?
So our Office of Drug Control Policy, which is our fiscal agent for our Drug-Free Community Support Grant, has been a huge champion for us. We kind of knew our 501c3 as our alliance really didn't have any money management, and we were unlikely to be seen as a viable source for that. So we reached out to them when we first applied for our DFC and said, was this something they would be interested in supporting us? And they were. The added benefit is all their connections in the state, and it gives you credibility when the Office of Drug Control Policy says, AC4C is your go-to. After 4 or 5 years of that, we have become the go-to in the state for all things prevention. And we continue to foster those state level relationships. So like the Iowa Alcohol Beverage Division, we have this huge bicycle ride called Rag Ride, the Register's annual bike ride across Iowa. And it's, I don't know how many years, a lot of years in the makings. Mm-hmm. And it's one huge party across the state. Well, they partner with us and our coalitions across the state to do the responsible beverage training with the volunteers. And we're able to do that. The Iowa CBD board is looking towards us to help them educate on what communities are doing around the marijuana education end of it, and information. We bring information to them. So there's just lots of places that we have partnered. Another big one was the Iowa Pharmacy Association. A couple years ago, we brought, prior to the attention to the opioid crisis in Iowa, we had a thought leaders summit where we facilitated conversations with all the power bees, from the medical schools to the medical society to pharmacy association, the board of pharmacy, law enforcement, you name it. The players that needed to be at the table were there. Mm-hmm. We looked at the history of where we were and how we got to where we're at, and the imperative things that needed to happen to really get ahead of this. And as a result of that, one of the things that really came of it was the fact that across Iowa, we really needed to educate more. People didn't realize what was coming at them. So we partnered with Iowa Pharmacy Association to do IPA Goes Local. And there we built consensus across the state with, we did 9 different sessions with every one of them having anywhere at the minimum of 30 to, we had as many as 100 people at those sessions. So that consensus that was built through that process really helped shape the legislative agenda as we went into what was important for making this change happen in the local community. How could we collectively work together?
All right, I like it. I'm noticing some themes from this conversation and my conversation when I interviewed ACT Missouri. Partnerships, that team approach, and really building that network to build those relationships. What are some of the sort of the first step for a new coalition or somebody wanting to start a coalition to go out and start building those relationships or connections?
Sure. One of the things, you mentioned earlier before we started talking, I wear lots of hats. So with Iowa Department of Public Health and their Partnership for Success grant through SAMHSA, I am a capacity coach. Mm-hmm. So I get to work with those coalitions that are just kind of starting out and fumbling through what they should do. And coalition work is not done at a desk. It's done in the community. And I just was talking to one of my coordinators yesterday about, what a difference it made to show up at the school and actually be face-to-face with the personnel. And it's like emails and phone calls were being ignored. But when she showed up, all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really getting in front of people. And I think that's the biggest thing especially on the state level. Our members of AC4C now really talk about how it used to be, oh, Dale Woolery at ODCP, he's like this, it was like, in the Oz and, the Wizard of Oz, it seemed like this person that was able to be approached. Now we have members that call him up and say, hey, I need your advice on this. And he became a person and a partner and an equal to our efforts. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the important thing, is not to be afraid to reach out to these folks, because bottom line, we're all trying to do the same thing. And we all want to, make the best place for our kids to be raised and have the best opportunities.
Yes, indeed. We are. We're all on the same team. We really are. And the nice thing about this field is we all really do care. We want to help. And so just bringing each other together so we can work together to make that biggest change and create that long-lasting, safe, healthy environment or communities. Now, you said AC4C had started in 2005.
Yep.
And you have now grown to be the go-to organization for the state when it comes to prevention. It reminds me of a quote that I've heard. An overnight success actually takes 16 years. How do you see that translating to AC4C or a coalition that's just starting?
That's one of the things I love about the Drug-Free Community Support Grant, that allows communities to have, to hopefully 10 years of funding. Because the first 5, you're just getting your steam engine going, and people are, it takes the first couple of years for even people to know that you're there. And then you just about when you get your momentum going, you're having to do your application for 6 through 10, but after those 10 years, you really have people in place and the passion is identified. So it is important to know that it's a journey, not a, one and done kind of thing. And that's part of what we've been working with the PFS as they start ending their cycle. You're just beginning. After this many years, you're just beginning. Mm-hmm. And the patience that it takes for community members to realize that you can't just put a one-time program out there and think you're going to change the attitudes that have been growing for decades.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Change definitely does take time. It is a process, and sort of piggybacking and tying that to relationships and those partnerships as well. I like to remind folks that building those relationships is a process. It takes time. It's not going to just happen overnight or with one email. And I love how you really drove home. It's that FaceTime, get together, go see them in person, and start building those relationships.
We work with Simon Sinek's Golden Circles, and we believe in people don't buy what you do, but why you do it. I mean, we can say that what we're about is to reduce, substance abuse in Iowa, but the reason why we do it is what brings us all together and weaves us as a tight-knit effort. And so we spend a lot of time in talking about, your contribution as law enforcement is to have the impact in the same area that we are trying to get to, and identifying what that impact is so that they feel valued when they come to the table.
Mm-hmm. I love that, starting with why. It's so important. And that, like we were just saying, we're all on the same team. Well, what's driving that team is the why behind what we do. Very much so. Very much so. That makes me think back to one of our previous phone calls. You had mentioned a training that you delivered to, I want to say, all of your coalitions about a way to build their skills so then they can go out in the community to better facilitate conversations around prevention and really get to that shared understanding of the why. I probably didn't do it justice there, but could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So what we have found is that there's great training on what a coalition should do. Again, the what, build a logic model, align it with the 7 strategies, get your community involved. Well, how do you get your community involved is what's oftentimes missing. And so we believe the foundation of it all is to have it within the conversation, the initial conversation that you have. If you can ask questions in a way that gets people to go down the path of sharing what the information is about and how they really feel about it, and then exploring what the tug is for them to, be involved, they'll more likely be able to act on what you're asking or hoping to get out of the conversation. So that's building that shared understanding that we hope to get out of every conversation we have with our stakeholders. And that training, we've been working with our National Guard to allow coalitions to ask them if coalitions want that. My understanding is we're really close, or it can be done through MCTC. They can ask for that training to come to them, and they can help sponsor that, or the funds are available. So the focus conversation would be what that is. And then the other part is we've done a ton of consensus workshop building, and that's where we build the shared agreement. We've used this process to build sustainability plans, build mission statements for coalitions over a lunch hour, and that's just a process of brainstorming. So we get everyone's individual ideas put down on paper, they share it in small groups, they bring it to the front wall, and together as a group we identify common themes and identify what those common themes are. And we just did this in a little town or little county down in southern Iowa, and they got all the titles, they read the titles out, and they're like, is that our mission statement? And we weren't intending it for that to be, but it really became what their mission statement was, and we did it in an hour and a half.
Oh, wow, it's almost magical.
I know, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I love it. Quick little sidebar plug. I know the folks listening at home keep hearing about the National Guard and the MCTC, and I'll tell you what, I've already partnered with them. AC4C is partnering with them. They are an outstanding resource, and the nice thing is they're in almost every single state. If they're not in your state, they can go to your state. Great resource. So reach out to them.
The Midwest Counter Drug Training Center, it covers everything pretty much in this regional district. So if you looked up their website, you can go in and see what training is there. Mm-hmm. The science-based education is one of the best ones that we've had out there, but you can also request, trainings, and you'll see our AC4C retreat out there. And actually we've had folks from Wyoming come and join us at our retreat as part of digging in and looking for things on the internet, how to do statewide coalition work.
Oh, that's wonderful. And actually, I haven't been able to fill you in, but we now, through the MCTC, have been connected to the National Guard Bureau out in DC, and we're discussing some future, even bigger picture collaborations with them. So thank you for turning me on to the MCTC, and it's just going from there. So thank you.
Yes.
Now, with sort of bringing it back to this coalition training, how does it fit in, complement, or align with the SPIF?
Sure. So, digging into data is where you got to start with, doing your assessment, right? And sometimes that's so hard to get everyone on board. So if you're able to have a focused conversation that really helps break down that data and have an understanding of it, what it all means for us and what's imperative for us to work on as a community. So the focused conversation really brings you into understanding what this whole data set means. And then, you can go many different directions, but within that group that comes around the table, if you can build a shared agreement around this is what we want to collectively work on, and that's that consensus workshop that we take it to the next level. So that begins to build into the assessment and capacity as far as that goes, because we all are saying, yep, and who also needs to be here. If we're going to do this, if we agree we need to do this, let's look at who else needs to be here. And then I mentioned how we've been using the golden circles with Simon Sinek's, and then we build a circles of involvement is what we call it. And it's from the very center of the drivers of the organization to those that just really need to stay informed. And so we look at building your coalition roster and capacity around that piece of it. So after we've got what we think we're going to work on, who needs to be at the table, we dive into that piece of it. And then we come back to really making plans. And we have an accelerated action planning that we do, and again, can be done over lunch hour. I think that's so important that we, maximize our limited amount of time. Mm-hmm. And so we take those things that we agreed we wanted to work on, and we build a community, a collective action plan. It's not the coordinator doing it, but it's all those people that come and join us at the table that create the plan.
All right. I like it. When I talk to folks about the spiff, I like to point out that the power is really in the process and in the team, those folks
Mm-hmm.
you have at the table. And it sounds like this really does fit in perfectly with the spiff. Oh, I like it. And uh, I'm sold. I can't wait to see one of these trainings and get to know your coalitions in closer detail and really hear about some of their successes. Now, we're getting towards the end because just as you stated, we're all busy and we want to keep these short and sweet so we can fit them into busy schedules at home and at work. But what upcoming event, training, or resources are you most excited about? You'd like to just share with our region?
Well, we just really pulled, I call her Mother Mary. We all had mentors, right? And I told you we had a DFC mentoring in the very beginning. And Mother Mary, it was kind of funny. She wrote me into a grant I didn't even know she had and called me up and said, hey, we got this grant, we need to meet. And so she wrote a mentoring grant for 3 of us for a drug-free community support grant mentoring. And then it was in like 2000, I don't know, 2 or something like that. We pulled her out of retirement and she did an evaluation for us that because she knew who we were, and that is being released this next month. It's been very humbling to see our work actually reviewed in a way that is, she surveyed our state partners and our coalitions, and just to see the work has mattered to folks. And so that will be coming out this next month, and I'm really excited to share it with folks.
Oh, that is wonderful. I would love to see that as well, because one of my personal passions is sharing the good work that everybody is doing in prevention. We often keep our heads down and we're just working away. We don't take time to look around us and also celebrate the small wins and really see that change is happening. So I'm all about shouting out and highlighting everybody's great work, because there's a lot of great work going on in our region.
And the other thing that I would just say is stay tuned. It's on our governor's desk. Iowa increased the CBD level from 3% to a way too much percent, and the governor has her choice to approve it or disapprove it. So we'll see if our education has gotten through or not. If not, we'll go into the next phase of what we need to do next.
Yep, plan B.
That's right.
We'll take a deep breath and keep our fingers crossed for you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been a delight and so much value you've brought to the conversation and to our region. How can folks find out more about AC4C or get in touch for more information?
Our email is ia.ac4c@gmail.com.
Okay. Wonderful.
And that's our best. Our website's under construction right now. I throw you over to it, but it doesn't look very good. But that is ac4c.org.
All right. Wonderful. I will throw both of those in the show notes for everybody listening so you can get those later. And I'm just smiling ear to ear. This has been a delight. Thank you very much for your time. I know you stay very busy. Keep up the great work, and thank you again.
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. You have a wonderful day. Thank you.
You too, Dave. Bye.